This has been a really fun group for us. In the first 2.5 or so weeks, we've got a lot of talent in our gym, a lot of youth. The lineup is primarily right now freshmen and sophomores, with a few seniors sprinkled in there. So it's a group that has, as I said, a lot of potential. I think they're very process oriented. They've come to work every single day, and they're making each other better, which is a big part of this process to getting better as the season goes along. So it's been fun to see that, and we're excited. I think we've got the pieces to grow together to be good by the end of the season.
We were just talking before you walked in that at the upper echelon of college volleyball, there's 10, 12 teams that are super close to being together here, and it's just the little things that make the difference. How much do you coach that to your players about just the fine details being the difference between getting that fourth seed like last year and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that go into this. One is the RPI, the rating point index, and for us, you have to schedule tough, and you have to be in the top 4 to be able to host all the way through. So it's why these first 5 games we're coming out of the gates fast. But that being said, we know that it's early. And so the attention does come down to kind of how you manage your game. The sport of volleyball is very different from a lot of other sports, is that every error costs you actually real points. I've mentioned this before, but like if a basketball team missed a shot and they cost them 2 points every time they missed, I think the scores would be different in men's and women's basketball. So for us, it's learning how to manage that game. It's learning how to build trust in that first 2.5 weeks. There's so many different skill sets that you have to go through, but managing the game at a high level becomes a big priority. And it's basically 25-23 is 48 points. It's basically a 4% difference. So you're looking how to be able to find that 4% difference between you and your opponents.
Is it dangerous to have such a stacked schedule early with such a young team? Or do you feel like you just have to?
It's dangerous, yeah. I mean, but it's what you do at Texas. You got to come out of the gates and you got to try to put yourself in a position to be a top 4 seed. But I think if you look back at our track record or my track record in terms of scheduling, it's always been tough. There's a lot of value to being able to play these teams early on in the season, to get to know what your team is and where you're weak, get exploited a little bit. And along the way, you're trying to get W's doing that. And so we've been able to do both of those. And, I think early 2012, we weren't a very good volleyball team. We got beat up pretty bad. And we ended up learning a lot from those matches and ended up winning a national championship. So obviously the goal is to win every match. But also we understand that, to go undefeated is a very difficult task in any sport. So, we're looking for how process-oriented we are, how well we connect, and how well we can execute in the long run.
Jerritt, only 24 matches. What went into making your schedule? Would you have liked more matches, and how did you get to the 24 matches number?
If you look at us the last few years, we're allowed 28 matches. We haven't been using those. The theory of trying to play 2 matches in a day is what you pretty much have to do, or you have to fill your non-conference schedule up with no breaks. And I think there's a huge risk that goes on. You talk about risk, is that when you play 2 matches in one day, the emotional letdown or the emotional highs that you go through, and then you have another match in 2 or 3 hours, physically, how are you able to kind of bounce back to that? So to my knowledge, we have not been penalized in the RPI because we've played fewer matches. I think our schedule will hold true to being strong enough to be a top 4 RPI team if we're able to take care of the victories. But for me, there's a lot of physical exhaustion that goes into the season. There's a lot of mental exhaustion that goes into that, and I think how you balance that as a coach is a big key to being successful. And so you need to find times where you can rest their bodies but also rest their minds. And we're not super deep this year. We only have 13 players on our roster, so I got to manage that as well as we progress through the season.
Coach, you guys have stayed at such a sustained level of excellence for so long. How do you personally keep yourself sharp? Because it almost goes against human nature to stay that driven for that long.
Yeah, that's a good question. We've had a lot of success. Some years we haven't deserved to be in the Final Four. Some years we have. But it's a tribute to the players that are in this program, the alumni that have come before us, the coaches that have coached with me. And so, everybody's I walk around and everybody, congratulates me on my team, and I still lose sleep every night of like, okay, how are we going to continue this? You know, because if we don't reach the Final Four, we haven't done that in the last 2 years. It's a letdown for our program. So it's hard to do. You got to keep grinding and you got to keep going and finding those next players. So that's a big part of this process for us. So for me, I've got to find time for myself. You know, I took a little time in Mexico for 4 or 5 days in June, and then after my USA stint that I did, I took about 7 or 8 days in California with my kids and my wife. And my wife asked me 3 days before, she goes, "Are you excited to go?" And I'm like, "I'm not excited yet. I don't let myself get excited till the first day that I actually walk in, but now I'm pumped up and I'm ready to go." It's just learning how to balance yourself a little bit more.
Coach, I want to talk about the USA stint. What was it like getting to coach 3 of your own players on that team?
Yeah, the USA stint was a special time for me. It's the second time that we've done it. This time it was the under 20 World Championships. So it was basically the Olympic Games for those players at that level. You know, the level of play there is phenomenal, and a lot more experience from other nations compared to our players. You know, we don't always have the best players in our country trying out for that, you know, but we had a really good team, great players, great unity, and to be able to have 3 of my players was you know, obviously beneficial, because the reason that I decided to coach that is, 1, I like to give back a little bit, but 2 is I knew that we'd be thin this year. I wanted to manage my team and not overwork them with the USA, and try to make sure that, you know, they stayed healthy and they remained healthy, so they'd come back in one piece. And then, you know, the benefit of getting to work with 2 of my freshmen was a big part of that too, getting to know their personality, you know, how much I could push them, the kind of talks that I can have with them. So I felt like we already had a relation coming into double days that did give me a head start. But it's always special to give back to USA Volleyball. Now it's what I would do, and I love that time of it. And, you know, it's just special for those athletes to experience that.
Coach, I know it's early on, but what do you think the strength of your team is here in the preseason, and what is it that you're looking at to work on and come together here in the early part of the year?
Well, it's a good question. We think the strength of our team is we got a ton of balance. You know, I think we can score at any position. And, you know, for us, we've got to become, you know, last year I think we hit 320 on the season. I think this team has the capability of hitting higher than that, maybe 5 or 10 points higher. But last year we had the defensive side, we let teams hit 198. You know, I'd like to get that down to 165 or 170. And then we're talking about a 40% difference in terms of point scoring, so that's a big part of it. But we've got to become a much better defensive team. We're spending a ton of time on that. We're spending a ton of time on our serve receive. And, you know, we'll get better as the season goes along just because of the youth of what we have. You know, we have Asia O'Neal right now, who's going to be starting in one of our middle blocking spots. She's phenomenal. There's days in our practice where she can absolutely dominate, and there's days where it's, you know, just from being young and different kind of flows of the game that she's learning. But we have a lot of confidence come October, November. She's going to be, you know, one of the country's best. Molly's also a young freshman middle blocker doing a great job in that area, and Skylar's, you know, put up some big numbers in our gym early on in the season.
Yeah, I know Nebraska's been out of the league for a while, but losing them maybe in the middle of the schedule, does it put pressure to load up early when maybe you're not quite ready for those to play so many good teams?
Yeah, you have to kind of look at your conference and where they are going to follow. I think our conference is getting better right now. You see, you know, some teams really kind of making some strides in the right way, which is great. You know, we're excited about that. We want that to happen. We want it done the right way, and it's a big part of it. But, you know, when you had a team like Nebraska in your conference, you know, Missouri was also a top 25 team a lot of the times, and Colorado had their kind of ups and downs, but sometimes they were really good in the top 20. So, you know, those were nice to have, and, you know, I would love to have Nebraska in our conference, just for that kind of rivalry is one, for our players to experience that, and 2 is for the RPI opportunities to get better. But, you know, I wish that what we would do is you'd start the season playing conference matches. You know, from the very first matches would be, you know, since we finished first last year, you'd play the bottom team in our conference and get a couple weekends of that, and then 2 or 3 weeks in, then we got a much better, you know, style of volleyball and better cleanliness to the game. And we learned a lot more about ourselves in those 3 weeks.
Who are your captains this year? And with Yazzie no longer here, who are you expecting to step up vocally?
Yeah, Yazzie was a special captain. You know, she really brought the team together. She was all about Texas, and, you know, she's a unique individual, and now playing in Italy and having success there. So that's a hard one to place, but we're experienced in doing that. We're doing it by committee. We have, Ori, Ashley Shook, Jenna's in there, Sydney's in there, and Logan is in there. So we're kind of waiting to see a little bit. I think this team is really united. I think their chemistry is really good. I think they push each other. But right now we don't have a true clear leader that you'd be able to see from the floor, and it's something that we're trying to get to. But also when you're so young, you're looking at worrying about, the first thing you got to do is take care of your own game. And at some point you'll get enough where you understand the game at a high enough level where you have a little bit of time to think and feel what's going on around you.
Is there one player that's come the furthest since last season?
Oh God, there's some good strides. I think Logan's really made a good strides in the backcourt. She's posted some pretty good numbers. So we have more of an attack coming out of the backcourt. I think Kay has really improved her game. Breon Butler was with the Pan American team, which is one step higher than the under 20 team. She's come back and become a very good blocker. And so we feel really good about that. Sydney, we broke her down a little bit last spring in terms of the technical stuff. We feel pretty good about where she's headed right now. I thought she had a really good game against LSU last week in the scrimmage. So I feel good about all the positions right now. And losing, as you mentioned, Yazzie, Skylar's been putting up those numbers, if not better, early on. So she's more physical. She's, 10 and a half. So when the set's right and things are flowing, it's hard to stop her because she has the ability to go over the block every time. And she's learning how to, identify where the defense is and where the seams are, learning how to hit the last 10 feet of the court. Young players want to pull the ball down a lot and try to score that way. But when you're physical and you start learning how to use the last 10 feet of the court, that's when it becomes pretty special.
What's Ashley's status, and what is the status of the setter position?
Right now, Jen is our starter. She's in that position. Ashley's injured, so she's coming back. Today was the first day she was in actually tennis shoes, moving around and doing some mobility stuff. So, I'm pushing to trying to be smart. Our trainer's been really smart and great with her. So, she needs to get back, but she's setting really well, and Riley's had a nice, solid preseason. So it's been good, and we'll see kind of what happens when Ashley comes back. But we feel good with our setting right now, and we're encouraged by that.
You guys got UNI to open, and obviously that's special for one player on your team.
Yes.
In the past, you've gone to Southern California, you've gone to Colorado, you scrimmage in Hawaii. How much of that is that coincidence? How much of that is giving some of those out-of-state players a chance to play in front of their family?
No, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I love about college coaching is that you get to give back to the game, okay, and you get to create experiences and memories for the athletes that you have. And what you want them to do is walk away from your program saying that was the best 4 years of my life, and I learned a lot as a player, but I learned a lot as a person. And when you're able to go see families and to be able to play in front of your family in Hawaii and show your team the culture that, like we did with Jenna, was priceless for her. She still talks about that. Obviously, Friday night against Northern Iowa, Bobby Peterson is the coach, and so she's the mother of Sydney. And it was something I talked to Bobby. I'm like, we have to do this. And she has a twin that's on the team, and so they'll be playing against each other as well. The whole family's coming down here, so there's going to be nerves, I think, from Bobby and the sister, and there's going to be nerves from Sydney. And to me, it's like I just smile thinking about how this is going to be forever talked about. They're forever going to have that video to go back and watch on. So hopefully it's Sydney winning and having those memories and throwing that in on Christmas, saying, "Remember this match?" So. But it's cool. We like to go back and try to get back to the players that are in the program.
Jerritt, because the league's strength is a little bit in question compared to some of the other leagues, how much pressure to go undefeated, and to have that on such a young team's shoulders?
Yeah, there's pressure every year. There's pressure whether you're a young team and you have to go undefeated, or there's a very experienced team, like we had in 2012 or 2009. Like you can't, it's regardless of who you are. Our athletic director, Chris Del Conte, they just had a college survey with, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but he mentioned that they ask other colleges who your rival is. Texas had 11 rivals. The next closest was Notre Dame at 5, and then Oklahoma was at 2. So it kind of tells you from a media or fan perspective that we get everybody's best shot. And so to do that, we have to be emotionally fresh, and we have to be able to be ready for that. But, we've been able to do it sometimes. My goal is if they're giving me 100% and they're into it and they're committed to what we're doing and we lose, I'm okay with that. In 2012, I thought, gosh, we had such a long streak, maybe it would be good for us to lose before the tournament to kind of wake them up a little bit. And we ended up doing that and played a phenomenal game. And it was just, Iowa State was better than us that night. But I was very pleased with our effort level and how we went about it. So the key to that and the key to the NCAA tournament is one game at a time. You know, all we're looking at right now is Northern Iowa. How do we beat Northern Iowa? Then we'll work on that. That's how you become successful. You start worrying about all the what ifs, then it becomes tough.
How many 6 rotation players do you think you'll have this year?
Well, right now 2. We're investing in Logan. Logan's confidence in defense. She's learning how to bend better. Her touches are better. Kaya's vastly improved defensively. We're going to be using those guys out of the backcourt a lot more. So it gives us some different options. I think you saw it a little bit in the orange and the white where Kaya came out and transitioned, so we don't get so predictable or it's a fast transition. We can find a better approach patterns and create some better opportunities for us. So if you can have 2 6 rotation players, you're in a good spot. If you have 3, then you're golden. And it's very tough to find at the collegiate level to find 3 players that can play 6 rotations. But we want to get to definitely 2 would be our goal. And if one of them's not performing well, we got a DS that can come in and perform. Or if she starts outperforming them in practice, then we'll look at that.